Oh, you with just a high school diploma? You're getting laid off this month.
I was taken aback by the words of Mr. Richardson, the newly appointed department head at our branch. He pressed on, seeing my surprise.
Didn't you hear? I said folks with just a high school diploma are getting the boot.
I finally gathered myself and retorted, just because you're a manager doesn't mean you're above everyone else in this company. What gives you the right to say that? Facing my logical argument, he coldly responded,
I graduated from a prestigious college and am an elite. I've seen many employees in my time. High school grads tend to be slower learners, lack initiative, and although they have a lot to say, they often slack off. These kinds of people drag down the entire team.
His biased view made my blood boil. How can you say that the stereotype you have for high school grads applies to me? I've been working diligently, and I don't think I'm inferior to those with a college degree. Colleagues who had been eavesdropping began to rally around me.
Tom, Bob here might have only a high school diploma, but he's exceptional.
There's no one as committed and hardworking as Bob.
Please observe Bob's work before making a judgment.
Their support warmed my heart, and I felt grateful for the hard work I had put in at the company. However, no matter how much I or my colleagues argued, Mr. Richardson insisted that high school grads were useless and should resign on their own. I have no intention of quitting. Ignoring Mr. Richardson's notice, I continued my job, but then the harassment began. They intentionally left me out of communications, delayed approvals, and rejected my proposals after belittling them. This made my work environment increasingly hostile. A month later, it's been a short time, but thank you for everything. I handed in my resignation to Mr. Richardson. He smirked as he took it.
Finally made up your mind, huh? Thanks for your hard work.
I nodded and headed to my desk. As I was packing my things, my colleagues surrounded me.
We're gonna miss you, but do well in your new place.
We're rooting for you, Bob.
Encouraged, I smiled back. It's been an honor working with all of you. Looking forward to the day we meet again. Mr. Richardson looked on with annoyance. I held my box and left the department I had been a part of for 10 years. Originally, I had planned to go to college after high school. However, just before graduation, on a snowy day, my father was a delivery man whose car skidded and crashed into a concrete wall after being hit by another vehicle. Although he survived, he was no longer able to drive. My mother was frail and couldn't work outside. The little income they got from home-based jobs was merely pocket change. I also had a younger sister who needed financial support. So, I decided to forego college and find a job. I barely managed to find a job, but thanks to my school counselor, who said, "I'll find a job for you, Bob, don't worry," and introduced me to a good company, I was able to secure my employment. I've been sending New Year's card to that teacher for the past 10 years. The job was in the Chicago branch, far from my family home, but the company offered living facilities with a cafeteria, so I was able to send enough money home. Next 10 years, I worked my tail off for my family to repay the favor to the teacher who helped me find a job, and for the company that accepted a high school grad like me. Whenever I faced challenges, I asked questions, practiced until I got it right, learned from my colleagues, researched clients thoroughly, and gradually built my achievements. I was well liked by my older colleagues and admired by my younger colleagues with college degrees. I felt grateful for my fortunate circumstances. Until Mr. Richardson was appointed, I was told I'm getting fired at the end of the month by the new manager, Richardson. I told to Kathy as we sat across from each other at the bar. Her eyebrows shot up in surprise.
What? Why?
Because I only have a high school diploma. He said having someone like me is a burden to the whole team. Listening to my reply, Kathy exclaimed, "That's ridiculous." I might have never seen her this emotional before. I had proposed to her after dating for 2 years. We were set to get married in 6 months, and now this hits us.
What are you going to do about it?
Kathy asked. I grinned. I'm not just going to let this slide. You know, That day, I was overwhelmed with joy and a bit of anxiety. Standing next to me was the beautiful Kathy in a pristine white wedding dress. Kathy and I were high school classmates. We both wanted to go to the same college and would often study together in the library. Although I had feelings for her, it wasn't the time to be distracted by romance. I decided that if we both got into the same college, I'd confess my feelings. Later on, both of us got into our desired colleges. It felt like a step closer to our dreams. However, an unexpected accident involving my father forced me to start working immediately.
Bob, after all the hard work you put into your studies.
Kathy looked even more upset than me, her shoulders shaking. At graduation, she confessed, "I've always had feelings for you, Bob. Even if we can't go to the same college, I still want to be with you." But I couldn't accept her feelings then. I had to work hard to support my family after only graduating high school. Kathy and I live in different worlds. That was what I thought. 5 years later, I attended a reunion during the summer break. That's when I ran into Kathy again.
Hey Bob, it's been a while.
She had always been pretty in high school, but now she had matured even more beautifully.
You're still working in Chicago, right?
When I replied yes, her face lit up.
Actually, I've been working at a design firm in Chicago. I don't know the city well. Could you show me around?
Despite my initial confusion, I agreed, and we exchanged contact details. From then on, we started hanging out more, visiting tourist spots and trying out local dishes in Chicago. Gradually, my feelings for her reignited. Now, we both had steady jobs, and my younger sister had graduated college and found a job. I felt it was the right time. Kathy, I've always had feelings for you since high school. Would you go out with me? As I confessed with my heart pounding, tears streamed down from Kathy's eyes.
I'm so glad. I never gave up on you, Bob.
Thinking of that time fills me with emotions. Noticing my gaze, Kathy gave a happy smile, making my heart swell even more.
Now, please make your entrance.
A staff member at the venue said. The doors opened wide and spotlights shone down. As we walked arm in arm past the seated guests. Long time no see, Tom. Sitting in the bride's side was Manager Richardson, who looked as if he'd seen a ghost and let out a scream. I had your assistants back in the Chicago branch office. My words were followed by Kathy's.
I've often heard about that time from my husband.
Mr. Richardson just stood there, with his mouth agape and looking lost. As I stand in front of the main table, the MC begins to introduce the bride and groom.
The bride and groom have already registered their marriage, and Bob decided to change his surname from Collins to Brown.
The wedding invitation included his former name, but another version without his former name was sent to Mr. Richardson. He probably never dreamed I'd show up as the groom at his company CEO's daughter's wedding. MC starts detailing my background.
Bob, after working at the Chicago branch of Brown Company for 10 years, had transferred to the New York head office and is now actively working as the director of the Human Resources Compliance Department.
Tom's eyes widen in shock. It was the first he'd heard of me working at the headquarters. After the incident with Manager Richardson, I discussed the current department situation with my soon-to-be father-in-law, CEO. Tom threatened to fire me and, after learning it was legally impossible, began to make my work difficult. If this continues, it'll not only be hard for me, but the atmosphere of the entire department will worsen. CEO pondered a moment before speaking.
It might be time to bring about a change in the entire company, not just concerning Richardson. Currently, we're thinking about setting up an internal affairs to address issues like power and sexual harassments. Bob, how about working in New York?
Kathy had mentioned that she wanted to quit her current job and start her own business once they got married. This might be the perfect opportunity. On the day I left the Chicago branch office, I submitted my resignation to Manager Richardson, but I knew it would be declined by the senior management. I had already been informed of my transfer to the compliance department at the New York headquarters. As this hadn't been officially announced, only the upper management knew.
You've finally made up your mind. Thanks for all your hard work.
Hearing this from Mr. Richardson almost made me laugh. But I'm marrying the CEO's daughter. It was amusing how he thought he had successfully pushed me out without knowing this. Others at the Chicago branch learned of my transfer to New York later on. Even after leaving Chicago, colleagues who cared about me reached out. I informed them that I was working in the compliance department at the headquarters and asked them to report any power harassment incidents related to Mr. Richardson. The chief guest and head of the Human Resources Department, Mr. Wilson, delivers a speech.
Although I've just recently started working with CEO, he has initiated various measures to improve the company's work environment since establishing the new department. He is always dedicated, sincere, and passionate. Thanks to CEO's contributions, Brown Company will become a workplace where employees don't have to face any form of harassment.
There was a loud applause from the audience, but only Mr. Richardson was looking down, trembling. Later on, I visited the Chicago branch. I'm Bob from the Human Resources Compliance Department in New York. I'd like to discuss some matters. Is that all right? Mr. Richardson, perhaps expecting this, nodded in agreement. He hadn't only bullied and discriminated against me due to educational differences, but had also shown educational and gender biases towards other employees, engaging in childish acts of harassment. Putting in the effort to get into a prestigious college is commendable and should be appreciated. However, that doesn't give you the right to look down on others who might not have the same educational background. As a director, it's your responsibility to encourage and uplift your subordinates. I cannot overlook the discrimination and harassment you've been committing. Mr. Richardson was demoted and transferred to the Customer Service Center. We hope he learns to empathize with customers' feelings and utilizes this experience for future relationships in the company. I'm home. As I peek into the living room, cheerful laughter fills the air.
Welcome back.
Kathy, gently touching her slightly swollen belly, smiles at me.
I'll get dinner ready in a jiffy.
As she tries to stand up, my mother stops her.
Let Kathy be. She needs to take care of herself. I'll handle it.
You shouldn't push yourself either, Mom.
Watching the playful argument, my wheelchair-bound father chuckles.
The usual banter, huh?
Yep. I agreed with a chuckle. When I visited Kathy's place to ask for her hand in marriage, I was stunned by the sheer size of her mansion. I had heard that Kathy's father ran a business, but I didn't realize they were that wealthy. Ever since Kathy invited friends over in elementary school, she had been labeled as rich by others. By the time she reached middle school, people often hit her up for money, saying, "You have money, so you can spare some." That's why, in high school, she decided not to talk about her home or parents. Seeing her welcoming parents made me even more surprised. Mr. Brown, the CEO. Never in my wildest dreams did I imagine my fiancé's father would be the CEO of my company. I had met the CEO once when he visited our branch in Chicago for an inspection.
I've heard good things about you, Bob. You're a diligent and outstanding employee. We have high hopes for you.
I remember feeling incredibly honored when he said that. Being seen favorably as an employee is one thing, but being the fiancé of his daughter is another. With my disabled father and the fact that I only have a high school diploma, would he accept me? Such fears swirled inside me.
I was surprised to learn Kathy's fiancé is one of our employees. But if it's you, Bob, I'm relieved. Please take good care of my daughter.
Mr. and Mrs. Brown welcomed me warmly, and I was so moved I could have cried. Since Kathy is an only child, they expressed their wish for me to be adopted into their family, a common custom. Of course, I'm grateful for that, but I had concerns about my parents. Until now, I had been financially supporting my parents, and my sister practically took care of them. But my sister got married and moved out of state, leaving just my parents living by themselves. Would it be okay if I rushed to my parents' side in case of emergencies? When I asked, CEO made an astonishing suggestion.
We'd like you to be adopted into our family. But we aren't thinking of living together. If you two wish, you can live with your parents.
I thought that might be burdensome for Kathy, but she promptly replied,
I'd love to live with Bob's parents. Their house is close to my parents, so we can visit often.
When I mentioned the idea of living together with my parents, they initially declined, not wanting to interfere with our lives. But Kathy insisted, and now we live together. Now, Kathy is like a beloved daughter to my parents.
I can't believe Bob brought home such a lovely wife, and soon we'll have a grandchild. We're truly blessed.
My mother said, and my father nodded in agreement.
Yeah.
Kathy took my hand and gently placed it on her belly. There have been many hardships in the past, but if they led to our current happiness, then they were all worthwhile. If my life were a movie, I'd want to live in a way that I'd never be ashamed of. As a husband, as a father, as an individual. With these thoughts, I gently caressed Kathy's belly.